nneoma's misfortune.
The sun rose over Omuagu village, casting its golden rays upon a cluster of mud houses that dotted the landscape. Each home, built with red earth and thatched roofs, carried its own story, but none stood out more than the grand mud house of Okafor, the wealthiest farmer in the village. Its walls gleamed white, painted with a mixture of chalk and clay, and were adorned with intricate woolly designs that told tales of abundance and blessings. Inside the house lived Okafor's family, led by his wife, Ebele, a gentle and wise woman who balanced her husband's prosperity with humility. Together, they had a daughter named Nneoma, whose name, Mother of Grace, was as beautiful as her appearance. Nneoma was a striking young woman, tall and graceful, with a complexion like fresh palm wine and eyes that sparkled like dew on a sunny morning. Her beauty was the talk of Omuagu. Men dreamed of her, women envied her, and mothers pointed her out to their daughters as the ideal of what a woman should be. But Nneoma's beauty was not her only gift. She was intelligent and quick-witted, able to compose songs at the village square and argue persuasively during moonlit debates. Yet, for all her talents, Nneoma had one glaring flaw: her pride. She carried herself with an air of superiority, walking through the village as if her feet never touched the earth. She considered herself too good for ordinary life, too refined for mundane tasks like farming or trading. One fateful morning, Ebele sat by the hearth, peeling cassava for the day's meal. She glanced at her daughter, who sat idly by the doorway, braiding her long hair with shiny black threads. "Nneoma," Ebele began, "why don't you come and help me with the cassava? The market will soon open, and we need to prepare." Nneoma wrinkled her nose. "Mama, must I? We have servants for that. Besides, my hands are too soft for such work." Ebele sighed, her heart heavy. "Nneoma, you must learn that life is not always as it seems. A wise woman knows how to use her hands, not just her words." But Nneoma only laughed, brushing off her mother's advice. She stepped out into the yard, where the morning breeze carried the aroma of fresh palm oil and roasted yam. Nneoma's work through the village. As Nneoma strolled through the village, her beauty caught the attention of everyone she passed. Young women, carrying pots of water on their heads, stopped to greet her, but she barely acknowledged them. "Why do they toil so much?" she muttered to herself. Perhaps they enjoy their lives of struggle. At the village square, where a group of children played NCHO, the elders sat under the udala tree, chewing kola nuts and discussing the latest happenings. One of them, Papa Onyeneke, chuckled as he watched Nneoma pass. "Look at her," he said to the others. "She walks as though she is the queen of the land. But even the tallest tree must bow to the wind." Nneoma overheard him and turned, her chin held high. "Let the wind blow," she retorted, "but it will never shake a tree as strong as I." The elders shook their heads, murmuring among themselves. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the village, Nneoma sat on the veranda of her family's mud house. She admired the finely polished floors, the cowrie-adorned mats, and the woolly patterns that seemed to dance in the flickering light of an oil lamp. Her father, Okafor, returned from the fields, his hands dusty from planting yams. Despite his wealth, he still worked alongside his laborers, a trait that earned him the respect of the villagers. "Nneoma," he called, his voice deep and steady, "I hear you dismissed Mama Nwanyi today at the market. She is an elder, and her words deserve your respect." Nneoma shrugged. She said I should stop boasting, Papa. But why should I not? Look at us. Look at our house. Look at me. I am not like the others. Okafor frowned but said nothing. He sat down to his evening meal, his face shadowed with concern. That night, as the moon rose high above the village, Ebele joined nneoma in her room. She placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder and said softly, "My child, let me tell you a story. There was once a tortoise who claimed to be the wisest and most beautiful creature in the land. He boasted so much that the animals decided to teach him a lesson. They filled his shell with stones and told him to climb the tallest tree. Do you know what happened?" Nneoma shook her head, her interest piqued despite herself. "He fell," Ebele said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He fell and broke his shell, and to this day, the tortoise carries the marks of his pride." Nneoma laughed. "Mama, you and your tales. I am no tortoise. I will never fall." Ebele sighed and kissed her daughter's forehead. "May the spirits guide you, my child. But remember, the rain that beats on the roof does not ask for permission to fall." As Nneoma drifted to sleep, her mother's words lingered in the air, unheeded but ominous, like distant thunder on a clear night. The sun had barely risen when the village of Umuagu came alive with the bustle of market day. It was Eke Uku, the biggest market day in the region, when traders from neighboring villages converged to sell their goods. The air was filled with the scent of freshly harvested yams, sizzling palm oil, and spicy peppers. Women balanced baskets of wares on their heads, while men pushed carts laden with tubers and firewood. The rhythmic beats of talking drums echoed from a corner, drawing smiles from children who danced to the lively tune. Ebele woke early to prepare for the market, tying her wrapper tightly around her waist. "Nneoma," she called, "come and carry this basket of cassava to the market for me." But Nneoma, still lounging on her raffia mat, yawned. "Mama, why must I? Surely someone else can do it." Ebele shook her head, her patience thinning. "You are young and strong, Nneoma. The market is not only for selling, it is where life's lessons are learned." Reluctantly, Nneoma rose, tying her brightly colored Ankara wrapper around her waist. She adorned herself with coral beads, styled her hair into an elegant bun, and dabbed a little camwood on her cheeks for a reddish glow. She looked more like a queen heading for a ceremony than a young woman going to market. At Eke Uku, the market teemed with life. The sounds of haggling filled the air as women bargained over the price of smoked fish, granuts, and fresh vegetables. Sellers called out to potential buyers, waving their goods enticingly. A row of blacksmiths hammered away at farming tools, while tailors displayed freshly dyed wrappers on wooden poles. Ebele found a spot under a large udala tree to set up her stall. She placed her basket of cassava alongside neatly arranged bottles of palm oil and fresh peppers. Meanwhile, Nneoma stood off to the side, arms crossed, scanning the crowd with disinterest. As a group of young women passed by, balancing pots of palm wine on their heads, Nneoma smirked. "Look at them, Mama," she said loudly enough for the women to hear. "Is this what life is for? Sweating under the sun like laborers? No, not for me." The young women glanced at her, their expressions a mix of annoyance and pity. One of them muttered, "She may be beautiful, but beauty without humility is like a flower without scent." Nneoma ignored the comment, lifting her chin higher. As the morning wore on, an elderly woman, Nwanyi Aja, approached Ebele's stall. Her back was slightly hunched from years of farming, and her wrapper was simple, yet neat. She placed a few cowries on the mat and picked a bottle of palm oil. "Nwanyi Aja, may the gods bless your home," Ebele greeted warmly. "And may they bless yours too," the old woman replied. She turned to Nneoma, her sharp eyes glinting. "Ah, so this is your daughter, nneoma. The whole village speaks of her beauty." Nneoma smiled, pleased with the compliment. "Thank you, Mama," she said, her voice laced with pride. Nwani Aja studied her for a moment, then said, "Beauty is a gift, my child, but pride is a burden. Do not let one overshadow the other." Nneoma laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "Mama, I have every reason to be proud. My father is the wealthiest man in the village. Our house is the finest. And as for me," she twirled, letting her beads clink melodiously, "I am unmatched." The old woman's face darkened, and she leaned in closer. "The drumbeat of pride," she said in a low voice, "attracts the dance of misfortune. Be careful, child." But nneoma only laughed again, turning her back to the old woman. "Let the misfortune come, if it dares," she said under her breath. As the market grew busier, nneoma wandered through the stalls, her haughty demeanor drawing stares. At a corner, a young man named Ekene struggled to lift a heavy sack of yams onto his cart. He slipped, and the yams spilled onto the ground. The crowd laughed, but none louder than nneoma. "Look at him," she said mockingly. "A farmer who cannot even carry his own yams. How will he ever provide for a wife?" Ekene's face burned with embarrassment as he quickly gathered his yams. An older man standing nearby shook his head and said to nneoma, "Do not mock those who toil, for the strength of the weak often surpasses the pride of the strong." Nneoma rolled her eyes and walked away, muttering, "Everyone in this village is full of proverbs." By the end of the day, the market began to wind down. Traders packed their wares, and the sounds of laughter and haggling were replaced by the rustle of baskets and the creak of carts. Ebele, watching her daughter with a worried heart, spoke gently as they walked home. "Nneoma, I fear you do not understand the blessings we have. Wealth and beauty are gifts from the gods, but they can be taken away just as quickly. A wise woman works with humility, no matter how high she stands." Nneoma sighed, tired of the constant warnings. "Mama, you worry too much. Nothing can bring me down." Ebele said no more, but as they reached their grand mud house, her heart prayed silently that her daughter would learn her lesson before it was too late. The market day had ended, but the seeds of nneoma's faith were already sown. The warnings of Nwani Aja and the elders lingered like the last notes of a distant drumbeat, unheard but ever present. The village square of Omuagu was lively that night, bathed in the silver light of the full moon. The sounds of merriment echoed across the open space as villagers gathered for the moonlit dance. The drums thundered, accompanied by the rhythmic clapping of hands and the melodic tunes of flutes. Young men, dressed in their finest isi agu shirts and woven caps, displayed their strength and agility in dances that drew cheers from the crowd. Nneoma sat at the edge of the square, surrounded by her friends. She was adorned in a vibrant red wrapper with gold patterns, her neck heavy with coral beads. Her hair was plaited into an intricate style, decorated with fresh cowries. As always, she stood out, her beauty a beacon under the moonlight. Her eyes scanned the square, unimpressed by the young men who danced with such fervor. None, in her mind, were worthy of her attention. Just as the drums shifted to a slower, more enchanting rhythm, a figure emerged from the shadows of the surrounding trees. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a spotless white wrapper tied around his waist and a matching tunic embroidered with gold threads. Around his neck hung a necklace of large, glistening beads, and his sandals gleamed as if they had never touched the earth. The stranger's presence drew the attention of the crowd. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who is he? He must be a prince. Look at his attire. He must be from a wealthy family. The man's gaze swept over the crowd, and when his eyes landed on nneoma, he paused. A small smile played on his lips as he walked confidently toward her. The villagers stepped aside, creating a path for him, their curiosity palpable. "Good evening," he said, his voice deep and smooth like the distant rumble of thunder. "I am Obina, a trader from the lands beyond the Ezu River. And you must be the famous nneoma, the pearl of Umuagu." Nneoma's heart skipped a beat. She straightened her posture, meeting his gaze with a mix of curiosity and pride. "And what brings you to our village, Obina?" "I've heard tales of its beauty," he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "But none mentioned that its greatest treasure was a woman." The crowd gasped at his boldness. Nneoma, though flattered, maintained her composure. "You speak well, Obina. But words are cheap. What proof do you have of your worth?" Obina chuckled, reaching into the leather pouch tied to his waist. He pulled out a string of dazzling beads, the likes of which the villagers had never seen. Each bead shimmered with a brilliance that seemed almost magical. He handed the necklace to nneoma. "These are from the farthest markets of Otuocha," he said. "Only the finest for the finest." The villagers murmured in awe, but nneoma remained cool. "A beautiful gift," she said, draping the beads around her neck. "Perhaps you are worthy of a dance." As the drums quickened, Obina extended his hand, and nneoma took it gracefully. Together, they moved to the center of the square. The crowd erupted in cheers as the two began to dance, their movements perfectly synchronized. Obina was not only handsome but an excellent dancer. He matched nneoma's every step, his agility and strength drawing admiration from all. Nneoma felt herself warming to him, her earlier doubts melting away with each beat of the drum. By the end of the night, it was clear to everyone that the two had formed a connection. As the crowd dispersed, Obina lingered by nneoma's side, speaking softly to her. Over the following weeks, Obina became a familiar figure in Umuagu. He frequently visited nneoma, bringing her exotic gifts, bracelets carved from ivory, fine wrappers dyed in vibrant colors, and bottles of fragrant oils. The villagers buzzed with speculation. He must be a prince, some said, or a trader with riches beyond imagination. Nneoma was swept up in the excitement. She paraded her new gifts around the village, her pride growing with each passing day. She barely listened when her parents expressed concern. "Nneoma," Okafor said one evening, "have you asked him about his family? His land, wealth can be like the river. It looks wide and deep, but sometimes it is shallow." "Papa," Nneoma replied, rolling her eyes, "Obina is not like the others. He is a man of substance, not words." Ebele added gently, "My daughter, remember, not all that glitters is gold. Take your time to know him." But nneoma was too enamored to heed their warnings. One moonlit night, Obina came to the mud house of Okafor, dressed in his finest attire. He carried a large basket filled with gifts, yam tubers, kola nuts, palm oil, and a fine bottle of Umanya Ngwo, palm wine. He knelt before Okafor and Ebele, his voice steady and confident. "I have come to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage," he said. "I promise to care for her and provide her with a life of comfort and joy." Okafor studied the young man carefully. "You are a fine man, Obina, but marriage is not a thing of haste. Can you provide proof of your wealth and status?" Obina smiled, placing a heavy bag of cowries before them. This is but a small token of what I can offer. My lands are vast, my trade prosperous. nneoma, standing nearby, looked at her parents with pleading eyes. Papa, Mama, what more proof do you need? Obinna is the man I've been waiting for. Ebele hesitated, but Okafor finally nodded. If this is your choice, nneoma, we will give our blessing. But remember, marriage is not only about wealth. It is about patience, understanding, and trust. I understand, Papa, nneoma said, though her thoughts were already consumed by visions of the life she believed awaited her. The stage was set for the union of nneoma and Obinna. The villagers, captivated by the romance, anticipated a grand wedding celebration. But beneath the surface of nneoma's joy and Obinna's charm, the winds of fate stirred, unseen and unrelenting. The day of nneoma's wedding dawned bright and beautiful, with the sun casting a golden glow over the village of Umuagu. The entire community buzzed with excitement, for this was no ordinary union. Okafor, true to his status as the wealthiest man in the village, had spared no expense in preparing for the grand occasion. Palm fronds lined the pathways leading to the village square, where the ceremony would take place. Women adorned the square with colorful fabrics and fresh flowers, while young men set up canopies made from raffia and bamboo. A team of drummers practiced their beats, and dancers rehearsed their steps, ensuring that the celebration would be a spectacle to remember. Inside her family's mud house, nneoma prepared for her big day. She sat before a large wooden mirror, her mother, Ebele, carefully applying camwood paste to her glowing skin. nneoma's bridal attire was nothing short of breathtaking. She wore a richly dyed George wrapper, wrapped tightly around her waist, and an elaborate blouse decorated with shimmering beads. Her headpiece was a masterpiece, a crown of coral beads arranged in a regal design. Her wrists and ankles were adorned with more beads, which clinked softly as she moved. Around her neck hung the dazzling necklace Obinna had gifted her, its brilliance a reminder of her perceived good fortune. Ebele watched her daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. "You look beautiful, my child," she said softly. "But remember, marriage is a journey. It is not always as smooth as it seems at the beginning." "Mama," nneoma replied with a confident smile, "I know what I am doing. Obinna and I are destined for greatness." Ebele sighed, her heart heavy with unspoken worries. The ceremony began with a grand procession. nneoma emerged from her family's compound, surrounded by a group of maidens dressed in matching outfits, their steps synchronized to the rhythm of the talking drum. The villagers cheered as they beheld the radiant bride. Obinna waited at the village square, looking as handsome as ever in his white tunic and embroidered wrapper. His broad smile revealed perfect teeth, and his confident stance made him the focus of everyone's admiration. Beside him stood his entourage, men dressed in equally fine attire, holding gifts for the bride's family. As nneoma reached the square, she and Obinna exchanged smiles, their eyes locking in a moment that seemed to freeze time. The elders blessed the union with kola nuts, prayers, and libations poured onto the earth to honor the ancestors. The wedding feast was a sight to behold. Long tables were laden with food, jollof rice, roasted yams, pepper soup, and goat meat. Women served fresh palm wine in clay pots, and children danced with abandon to the energetic beats of the drummers. nneoma and Obinna were the stars of the celebration, their every move watched and admired. The couple performed a traditional dance together, their steps perfectly aligned. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, hailing them as the perfect pair. As the night wore on, nneoma reveled in the attention and admiration. She felt like a queen, surrounded by her subjects, basking in the glow of her newfound happiness. As the festivities began to wind down, an unexpected figure approached the newlyweds. It was Nwani Aja, the elderly woman who had cautioned nneoma at the market weeks earlier. She carried a small clay pot and walked with a deliberate pace, her eyes fixed on nneoma. The crowd parted to let her through, curiosity etched on their faces. Nneoma, she called, her voice firm but kind. Congratulations on your wedding. But I must remind you of my earlier warning. Nneoma frowned, her joy momentarily dimmed. Mama, today is my wedding day. Surely this is no time for warnings. Even the tallest tree must prepare for storms, Nwani Aja said, placing the clay pot at nneoma's feet. May this marriage bring you wisdom and humility, as well as joy. Without another word, the old woman turned and walked away, leaving the crowd in hushed whispers. The night ended with Obinna leading nneoma to his home, a place no one in the village had seen. As they prepared to leave, Obinna's entourage brought out a grand carriage, intricately carved and pulled by 4 strong men. The villagers marveled at the sight, many whispering, "He must truly be a prince." As nneoma climbed into the carriage, she felt a surge of pride. She waved to the crowd, her smile radiant. "Goodbye, Umuagu," she called. "I will visit soon, but my new life awaits." Obinna joined her in the carriage, and with a signal, the men began to carry it away, their steps steady and synchronized. The villagers watched until the couple disappeared into the horizon, their cheers echoing long after the carriage was out of sight. As the carriage moved through the night, nneoma felt a strange unease. The landscape around them grew unfamiliar, the lush greenery of Umuagu giving way to dense forests and rocky terrain. She turned to Obinna, who seemed calm and unbothered. "Are we far from your home?" she asked. "Not too far," he replied with a reassuring smile. "Patience, my love, you will see soon enough." But as the carriage entered a dark, narrow path surrounded by towering trees, nneoma's unease deepened. The sounds of the night, crickets, owls, and rustling leaves, seemed louder, more ominous. She clutched the necklace Obinna had given her, its weight suddenly feeling heavier than before. Little did nneoma know, her journey was only beginning, and the life she had imagined was far from the one awaiting her.